Giosuè Gallucci was a crime boss of Italian Harlem in New York City affiliated with the Camorra. He dominated the area from 1910 to 1915 and was also known as the undisputed king of Little Italy, partly due to his political connections. Born in Naples, Italy, he rose to become one of the city's most powerful Italians and was allied with Tammany Hall. Despite his political clout and power, Gallucci was subject to Black Hand extortion, and his rule was frequently challenged. He was eventually killed by a rival gang in 1915, and the fight over the lucrative numbers rackets left behind by Gallucci was known as the Mafia Camorra War. Giosuè Gallucci was born in Naples, Italy, on December 10, 1864, to Luca Gallucci and Antonia Cavallo, and was also known by his nickname, Luceriello. He arrived in New York City on the SS Werkendam from Rotterdam, the Netherlands, on March 11, 1892. It is speculated that he returned to Italy sometime later, because he left Italy again on July 24, 1896, according to an Italian police report. Gallucci was rumored to have murdered a man just before arriving in New York, but he publicly denied this. In April 1898, he was arrested in New York in connection with the murder of Josephine and Selma, who the police portrayed as Gallucci's lover. The apprehension took place while he was operating a fruit wagon in the neighborhood, and he was described as a young grocer and expressman with a store at 172 Mott Street. Gallucci claimed he had no reason to kill the woman and provided an alibi, and the charges were later dismissed by a grand jury. Detective Joe Petrosino of the New York City Police Department, who was in charge of the investigation, urged his superiors to seek additional information in Italy. Gallucci, according to the police prefect of Naples, was a dangerous criminal belonging to the category of blackmailers who had been placed under police surveillance and charged multiple times with theft, blackmail, and other crimes. Gallucci's brother's criminal history in Italy was even more extensive. Vincenzo Gallucci was imprisoned twice and convicted 16 times for assault, attempted murder, and other crimes. Francesco Gallucci was convicted 6 times for attempted murder, theft, and police assault. Vincenzo was shot in New York City on November 20, 1898, supposedly on orders from an Italian secret society similar to the Mafia. He died the following day. Francesco D'Angelo and Luigi La Rosa were charged with the murder. Both pleaded guilty to manslaughter and received sentences of 20 and 15 years in prison, respectively. According to Petrosino, the Galluccis were just 3 of over 1,000 Italian rascals from Naples and Sicily who had settled in New York City. They did not draw much attention because, as a class, they robbed their own people, and the Italian scheme of fix-it-myself interferes to confuse the police. The Galluccis could not be deported because they had been in the country for more than a year. Gallucci established a number of businesses in Little Italy and East Harlem, first on Mulberry Street and later at 318 East 109th Street in a 3-story brick house with a bakery and an attached stable. Following the arrest of Sicilian-American Mafia leaders Giuseppe Morello and Ignazio Lupo on counterfeit charges in 1910, he became the undisputed boss of Little Italy. He owned several tenements in the area and ran the coal and ice business, cobbler shops, olive oil business, and lottery in the Italian neighborhoods. He was one of the most powerful moneylenders, with tight control over the policy game, and he used Neapolitan and Sicilian street gangs as his enforcers. Gallucci ran the Royal Italian Lottery's New York office, which was actually a front for his own policy game, and sold thousands of tickets every month throughout Harlem. He ran the lottery from his basement, and he had agents in many cities with large Italian populations. There was a grand drawing once a month and only one prize, $1,000, but the winner was frequently robbed of the money when it was paid. The majority of Gallucci's income came from his control of the policy playing in Harlem, various gambling houses and houses of prostitution, all located in that section of Harlem known as Little Italy, according to the New York City Police Department. Gallucci gained near immunity from law enforcement by being allied with the Tammany Hall, a Democratic political machine that ruled Manhattan and New York City politics virtually unopposed. Tammany Hall's political patronage controlled the city's police and bureaucracy, which awarded construction contracts and licenses. He delivered a significant number of ballots thanks to his ability to mobilize the vote in Harlem and register immigrants. According to the New York Herald, he was certainly the most powerful Italian politically in the city, and during campaigns was exceptionally active. His political connections provided him with some measure of immunity from police interference. According to Salvatore Cattillo, the first Italian-born justice of the New York Supreme Court who grew up in Italian Harlem, to Gallucci, everyone was either a hireling or a payer of tribute. It was cause for concern in the neighborhood if you were looked down upon by Gallucci. When Gallucci was arrested for carrying concealed weapons, Cattillo was asked to testify as a character witness on his behalf, but he refused. In doing so, the Neapolitan-born Cattillo distanced himself from the local underworld, which attempted to offer him their services. Gallucci allegedly told a reporter from the New York Herald who claimed to know him, "I have been accused of being interested in horse thieves, blackmailing, extortion from shopkeepers, bomb explosions, kidnapping of children and other crimes, including murder. My enemies are lying. They are jealous of my prosperity. I am blamed for every criminal deed which takes place here, but it is not the truth," he told the Herald reporter. Many of the murders down here are the results of quarrels among the blackmailers themselves. They gamble, which leads to fighting, and they dispute the division of spoils. If a leader thinks another is trying to become boss, that man is marked for death. On November 14, 1909, Giosuè's elder brother, Gennaro Gallucci, was shot dead in the back room of the family bakery. The assassin walked into the bakery and called out his name. When he appeared, he was immediately shot and killed. 1 year before, in December 1908, Gennaro arrived in New York from Italy, having escaped from prison after serving 23 years of a life sentence for the murder of 2 men. He shared an apartment on East 109th Street with his brother Giosuè and sister-in-law, Assunta. Soon after his arrival, the police received complaints about extortion practices, but when the plaintiffs were told they would have to confront him in court, they dropped the charges. The police believed his killing may have been connected to Gennaro's blackmailing activities. The bakery of the Galluccis had been attacked only a few months before when bullets smashed through the window. In letters that were sent to the police, some informants claimed that Giosuè had been responsible for the killing of his brother. Giosuè, on the other hand, blamed Aniello Prisco, a feared Harlem gangster, for his brother's death. For the next 2 years, the rivals would clash frequently, with occasional killings. Prisco was the leader of the Black Hand gang, and he accused Gallucci of invading his territory. Gallucci's position around 1912 was described in a 1917 police report based on the testimony of gangster and informant Ralph Daniello. Gallucci was in charge of various gambling games at the time, and he received a percentage of the proceeds from the sale of stolen horses and artichokes. If a person does not pay this percentage, he will be assaulted, receive blackmail letters, or be killed. A Sicilian faction, including 3 brothers of Giuseppe Morello and his cousins, the brothers Fortunato and Tommaso Lomont, was also working in conjunction with this Gallucci, who at all times had been recognized as king, according to the report. Gallucci was not immune to Black Hand extortion despite his power and political clout. He was frequently threatened by Black Hand, was frequently shot at, and had been wounded numerous times. Prisco's gang of Neapolitan Black Handers gunned down several members of Gallucci's entourage in 1911 because he refused to make protection payments. On December 15, 1912, during a meeting at Gallucci's bakery shop, Prisco was shot by Gallucci's nephew and bodyguard, John Russamano. Russamano was not charged with murder because he claimed he was acting in self-defense. Gallucci was not only challenged by rival gangsters, but the authorities were also closing in to respond to the spate of murders, bombings, and blackmailings. In July 1913, he was one of more than 40 people arrested in Mulberry Bend and Upper Harlem to combat illegal gambling known as the Policy Game, which was led by Assistant District Attorney Deacon Murphy and Deputy Police Commissioner George Doherty. The police described him at the time as the leader of the Italian criminals in Harlem, and that his consent was required before anything out of the ordinary could be done in Harlem's Little Italy. The arrests may have been made in an attempt to disrupt Gallucci's vice ring, according to speculation. He was charged with carrying a concealed weapon, a Sullivan Act violation, but was released on $10,000 bail. The case, however, never made it to court, which many attributed to his political connections. Gallucci was also involved in violent fights with rival gangs over control of illegal rackets. The Neapolitan Delgadillo brothers were involved in illegal gambling in East Harlem and had connections with the Brooklyn-based Navy Street gang, but Gallucci allegedly denied them permission to operate a lottery. Niccolo Delgadillo attempted to kill Gallucci but failed. He then fled from Italian Harlem, but returned in October 1914 and was killed. Gallucci was blamed for the murder, but no charges were filed. With Gallucci's prestige dwindling, he scrambled to maintain control as the war with Prisco's old gang raged on. Rival lotteries began to emerge, posing a threat to his dominance. Gallucci had decided not to hire bodyguards again after the latest in a string of fatal shootings. Being a bodyguard for Gallucci was regarded as a dangerous occupation, as 10 of them had been killed. Meanwhile, the Morello gang had split with Gallucci and formed an alliance with the Brooklyn Camorra gangs. On May 17, 1915, he and his son, Luca, were shot in a coffee shop on East 109th Street in Italian Harlem that Gallucci had recently purchased for his son. He had been shot in the stomach and neck. His son was shot through the stomach in an attempt to defend him and died the next day. The funeral for Gallucci's son was the largest Harlem had ever seen up until that point. According to reports, the last carriages were leaving the church in Harlem when the hearse arrived at the Queens Cemetery. Gallucci refused to speak with police, claiming he would settle the case himself, but he died 3 days later, on May 21, at Bellevue Hospital.